Little known fact, Tim Clancy is actually a very good hurler, or at least you played a bit anyway.
I wouldn't say very good, Johnny. A defensive corner forward would be my position.
Where did you play? Is this an app boy, is it? Or
Kiltale, down just outside Trim there. So
you were playing when you were Drogheda manager, weren't you? You were like doing bits in the summer and that.
Occasionally,
yeah. Rocking up for
whenever they're stuck. Yeah, the juniors now. No one near the seniors.
So it's interesting because we're speaking to Sarah about like trying to get camogie sold. Like you've kids as well. Like so, in your part of the world, what are they likely to? I know one of your daughters has gotten into horse and that, but what are they likely to be introduced to locally? I suppose in Meath.
Listen, I think Trim's got unbelievable facilities in the GAA club. I'd say it's one of the best in the country for a club team. It's remarkable setup they have up there, and there's strong, obviously, GAA connections in Meath and Kiltale, where we were living for 5 years there, where the kids go to school, is just all hurling and camogie. There's no football in that little village, so I think you play for either Dunsany or Manalvi in the football if you're from Kiltale. So that area, I think they had a few there in the intermediate. All-Ireland final there on Sunday as well, from the club as well. So there's just a good chance you'll end up, if you're definitely from Kiltale, you'll definitely be playing hurling or camogie.
Say you're a kid, right? Facilities got to matter, right? So I was actually delighted with the Icelandic lads who went to Oriel last week and said, what do they call it? Like they don't
pigsty.
Pigsty, and they're like the pitch is a disgrace. They were saying, notwithstanding, and you're looking at like Breiðablik, who are like third in Iceland, or whatever, and Shamrock Rovers go over there. I wasn't there, but by all accounts, really, really modern facilities, sports kind of facilities, and I don't know, Tim. In this country, we're so far behind, not only in football but so many sports. You're like, we've so much money in this country, we can't seem to get our facilities right.
No, I think even if you look at, there's a huge project for Park Talton in Meath, and a lot of the clubs as well would be probably the same, haven't been touched, football or GAA in the last maybe 15, 20, 30 years even. I think the League of Ireland, we've banged that drum enough now that the facilities are the main thing that we have to try and improve. And
facilities or training facilities?
All facilities.
Yeah.
All facilities, and I know managers will prioritise training facilities, and also others will probably higher up will prioritise this stadia. But I think as soon as both improve massively, and that's only going to help with government funding, you'll see probably a better product for.
I'm going to ask you a very, very personal question before Dan gets in. What football have you been watching since you left the role in Inchicore? Have you been watching League of Ireland? Are you?
Yeah, no, I'll watch a game most weekends. I'll have the LOI TV on. If I don't go, I've been to Drogheda a few times. The Bows against Rovers. Bit of a bandwagon jumper like yourself there, Johnny. Only big games to go to, but
that's not.
To be fair, that's a bit harsh on Johnny. He doesn't go to games at all.
But like the Irish players now, like the likes of, you're looking at the Southampton situation, and like, will you start engrossing yourself now in all the kind of the English and Scottish games as well, with this massive Irish interest, particularly at championship level, I suppose?
Yeah, I think last weekend you've seen probably a good bulk of our players getting the first game of the season in the championship and SPL or whatever else. So I'll take in a good few games. The ones that are on the telly and the ones you can get access to. So I watched a bit of the Cardiff and Leeds game, and Callum O'Dowd was doing really well at left back, and fortunately they let in a few late goals or whatever, the late goal that cost them the point. But it's good that actually football's back, and you can see that football in the UK is back. You can see that the buzz about the place again, and a lot of the Irish players are getting going again now.
Because I know I was chatting to you briefly last week about Chidozie Ogbene, who you played against, who's gone to play Premier League football this year, and I know you would have worked with Luke McNally, who Johnny likes to bring up in this show maybe every 30 minutes or so, but like he's gone on loan now to Stoke. And I just wonder, like, from your experience of like spending a lot of your career in the UK as a player, and then seeing players here and knowing what it takes, that, like, I think it's funny, I think there's a correlation. You always spoke with Luke about how athletically he's very good. Ogbene, you spoke about playing against him when he was 18, 19, and you could see his athleticism. Is that almost the number one thing we're looking at with some of our Irish players now, in terms of making that transition to the UK and seeing the ones that can hopefully make it over there?
I think that's where football's going. Yeah, I think if I've spoke to Owen Doyle about it quite a bit as well, and Doyle was flying in the SPL and flying in League One and League Two level, and then when he stepped up to the Championship, he said it's just a little bit different, where they're all physically very, very good. I'd say it probably is the first thing that someone asks you as soon as what's this player like, and then next question will be, how big is he? Athletic, quick, and it sort of goes down that route. And then I think to be playing at that level and not be athletic, you have to be absolutely phenomenal. And I think the ones like Ogbene, who left, he was at Cork, obviously he's a young lad, and went to Limerick to get game time, and I played against him, and he was athletically very, very good, and he's kicked on again.
Ogbene.
Yeah,
that's mad when you think about it.
When he was at Limerick, when I was at Braid last season, I was there. So, and then you'll see the likes of Luke and young lads like that as well. And I think that's why I spoke so very highly of Adam Murphy as well.
I was just going to say,
he's athletically very, very good.
Because people will ask you, because at St Pat's Boss, you worked with Adam Murphy, with Sam Curtis, even with Mason Melia, sort of laterally, who is like, he's 15, so it's insane, but he still is on everyone's radar. But they are the attributes you have to be looking at.
Yeah, but I think Mason's probably ticked a box already at 15 that don't have to worry about his size. He's a big kid. He's probably 6'1".
Yeah.
He's athletically very good, and he's obviously going to grow and be stronger. So clubs don't have to worry about signing potential. Going, is he going to be physically big enough? Because Mason will develop into a very, very strong young man, and ability wise he's exceptional. You see what he's done at Pats, and obviously Big Dinty's given him his debut, and he's scored a couple of goals this season. So yeah, I think it's a question mark that clubs will have. They're investing money, is are they physically going to be able to be good enough? And when you have someone like Evan Ferguson, probably 4 years ago when Brighton signed him, he was physically already capable of playing men's football, and I think Mason ticks the same box there.
Meads, Evan Ferguson, of course. There wasn't too many Mead lads playing over in the UK for a while, and like he's sort of killed you all now, hasn't he, really, Evan?
No, he's
Mead lads as well.
Jamie McGrath, you've got Darragh Lenihan.
There's been a glut of them now, like
It must be weird watching, if you watch Pats or if you watch them in Europe, and it just must be strange. What's that been like? Because say their European performances against Dudelange, they obviously got away with it a bit in the first leg, great moments in the second leg, but I was thinking you would have set them up a bit differently, because you would have been maybe I was thinking Pats in Europe last year compared to Pats in Europe this year, you're different managers now.
Yeah, listen, I don't think results would have been any different with me there. Like, listen, I might have maybe looked at something different, but didn't he had a big say when I was there as well. So, and he has them absolutely flying. They're flying in the league, the form that they're on. So, I think he'll be a little bit disappointed in the European game. The goals they gave up were probably ones that, as a manager, you can't allow for. Like, you can't sort of be on the pitch and make decisions for players. And I know the second leg, I only got the second half of the second leg, and when Adam Murphy scored, I thought there was only going to be one team that was going to go on and win it. And then listen, there's a poor decision by a centre back to play straight into the midfield, and then to compound that, he flew in and tried to win the ball back, and they go in and get a goal and sort of killed the momentum of the game Pats had. So
this is John Daly you're talking about, just if you're not aware who Dinty is. So John Daly took over from Tim, but I suppose there's been a lot of focus on the European performances, and I love how John Daly went with a lot of young players in Europe and gave them experience. Some of them revelled in it, some of them learned from it. Shamrock Rovers didn't really have that option, or didn't use that option, and it was really, really limp. In fairness, we got to say, they scored one goal over the whole European campaign, and that was a penalty.
Yeah, but like, again, we're looking at individual results this season and saying, right, where did it go wrong and what went wrong with Pats? And I think Dudelange were in the group stage twice in the last 4 years. So they're a good team.
They weren't a bad side, yeah.
They're a good team. Like, both teams that Rovers played, like, to get the first round of the Champions League once, it's a tough game to play, and when you lose that, you get Ferencváros in the second round, or your next European game, and I think they were in the group stage last year, and they're a good team. Like, so, and you see the setup when you go over and you're looking at the game on the telly, and there's a 25,000 seater stadium, and it's a big club. So I think we've probably been spoiled for it. Last year was an exceptional year in Europe, because I think Sligo won a lot of games under Rustler, and we got through to the third qualifying round. Rovers got to the group stage, so it was a really good year. And then obviously you're only left now with Derry in the third qualifying round this year, so you're going to have that. Once the picture overall for the I suppose take over a 5, maybe 10 year period looks more positive. You're going the right way then.
Mm. I mean, Derry, when you think about it, the Derry City story, I know you have strong links in Belfast, Tim, and the prospect of Derry playing in Windsor Park now is...
If you haven't heard, this is absolutely class. Yeah. So when I heard in the second half of the game, when Derry looked like they might go through a basket case, such an enjoyable game in Finland, I was on to a Derry fan and he's like, they're not going to be able to play this in Brandywell. And I was like, they got to play it in Windsor. And he's like, no, it's going to be Tala. I was like, Windsor would be unbelievable. It may happen. This would be so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you wouldn't think that would have been the case. Well, the reason why they're in the League of Ireland is probably because of the trouble there was maybe 30 years ago when they were playing in the North, or 40 years ago, whenever it was. So
40 to 50 now, really.
Yeah,
well, it was 1972 when they left the Irish League because
50 years ago,
the other clubs in the Irish League they voted against going to play in the Brandywell on account of their security concerns. So Derry did try and get back in a couple of times subsequently, and again the feeling was, the clubs wouldn't go and play in the Brandywell, and clearly there's a whole issue of how Derry's relationship with Belfast and the whole the issue there. So I remember when Derry played Linfield in 2006 in a Setanta Cup tie, and how big even that was for Derry to go and play a competitive game there. But for Derry to host the game there effectively, to actually, for a team from Kazakhstan to go there and this is, you watch a game from afar, like that team that Doc played last week, KA, they were actually playing a couple of hours away from their home ground, but to us, and they were like, the Doc were playing away against KA in their home pitch. People around the world might be looking at Derry are playing on there's their home ground, in Windsor Park. I mean, it's extraordinary.
It's such a cool
the first time I was in Windsor Park, you go in and into one of the function rooms there, and
there's the Queen.
There's a big portrait of the Queen there,
now, of course.
And and Derry playing there. I mean, it would be an incredible thing to happen.
I remember my first experience at Windsor was going to watch, I think Cork City were playing there, and I got a lift back. It was the day that the smoking ban was introduced in Northern Ireland, I remember, and I was on the Shankill because the Linfield fans had laid out this kind of reception for the Cork fans, and I remember getting a lift back into town with a busload of Linfield fans that I'd never met before, and I was meeting a kid from County Down, a Catholic kid, and I remember when he saw the bus arriving, he was like, kind of, what the hell is this? And it has moved on so much, I think, since then.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, Pat Fennon had a stint up there again as director of football, and a lot of the players in their academy teams now are coming from Catholic areas. I think Pat's gone on record in saying that the setup that Linfield have is phenomenal. My nephew actually plays there as well, and he's doing quite well. And
who's he playing with?
He plays for Linfield's, I think it's 15s or 16s.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's over in...
Where's he from?
He's from, he's from the Short Strand, is where's Dad's from.
He's a Short Strand kid playing with Linfield's underage.
Well, his dad's from there, yeah. He's living over in, I think it's... I think the Antrim Road area now. So,
cool.
But there's loads of the kids, and
this is a big deal.
It probably goes now that they get treated really, really well there, because Linfield see that there's a massive talent pool in all areas, and I suppose to keep the Catholic kids, they probably treat them really, really well, and might prioritise signing them than kids in their own area, because they know the kids in their own area will sign there anyway.
I'm sorry, Tim, look at the facilities, look at Windsor Park.
Yeah,
you want to play, it's such a cool ground, and Dan, the crowd that Derry could get there, imagine the interested onlookers type, because I was up, I don't know if you were at the game, Linfield Carabeg a couple of years ago. Stevie O'Donnell was with me at the game, I remember, and there's such a buzz that night in the ground, but outside the ground there were I remember there were UVF flags.
Oh yeah, no.
So it's this is the heartland of loyalists. What is it, South Belfast? So there's a lot going on here.
No, this is a sort of a news story game as much as anything, and particularly
if it happens.
If it happens, it's in UEFA. UEFA have to decide, but it does seem like all the various associations are fine with it, which is progress in itself.
I think there may be an issue that the Kazakh players are trying to get Irish passports and blah blah blah. Anyway,
well, it could be. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's actually can be. Well, the Derry did benefit in the previous round from a couple of African players not being able to. And I did look at the top all squad. They do have an African striker, so I don't know. Maybe it suits if it's in Belfast, but
it is mad.
The bigger point, Tim, I suppose, is for Derry to try and keep the tie alive, to bring it home. I mean, they could have been playing Basel, and I think there would have been a sense of Basel that get end of the road. All of a sudden you're playing a team that, okay, they're clearly good because they've beaten Basel, but it doesn't seem as intimidating on paper. And like Derry have good European experience running through their dressing room now that everyone seems to be fit. I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say without knowing much about the opposition, but what do you think about their prospects?
Yeah, but that could also play into the hands of probably expectation levels of Shamrock Rovers. They should be in the group stage every year now because of how well they did the last year. Yeah. So because this team on paper maybe isn't as good as Basel, people are saying, oh well, they've got a good chance of winning. So I've spoke to Higgy briefly about them, and he says, listen, they're a very good team.
They press very heavily,
press aggressively. So again, you're going to go into the game, and listen, if you're going through this round, it's going to have to be, as you said, bring the game back to Windsor or whatever it is.
If you're playing, so if you're managing, so if you're Rory Higgins in that situation and you're going away from home and you're playing against a team that you know is going to press really heavily against you, how do you try and approach it then with Derry, with the personnel you have? Like, what are you thinking then? How do you try and go a little bit more direct at times, or what instructions are you giving to your players in that scenario?
Well, there's multiple ways you can do it. Obviously you have to, without seeing them, you have to see what type of players they have, and if they're athletic in the middle of the pitch, or if the centre halves are not the most mobile or whatever. I'd imagine, as you're saying, that you could beat the press and hit Cavan up top if you wanted to go with a big man who holds the ball in very well, and then just get your legs like Mickey Duffy and other ones off him. Well, listen, Higgy's done exceptionally well this season and last season
as well. In fairness, look at Kavanagh's role last week. Was a bit part player. Graydon he brought in, who then was sold, and they weren't at all concerned from that game in Finland. They really did approach it trying to score goals. Like,
yeah, and I think if you look at that, Keane Kavanagh was in the first division, obviously with Waterford, and Graydon was in the first division with Longford, and Higgy's brought them into a team that's challenging, winning cups and challenging the top of the league, and it's brave, and you can see that. Obviously, it's one of the things that Rory's very good at is spotting a player that will fit into his system and do well in his teams, and that's why the young boy McMullen, I think it is, that's coming on the way.
Great signing.
Looks very, very good, and it's always the sign of a good signing is Stephen Kenny was excellent at Dundalk. When he lost Horgan, he brings in Mickey Duffy, and when he lost, I think it was someone else, he brought in another, like I think Andy Boyle left in Vemland or whatever his name was, came in.
Yeah, he was a good player.
And he brought in players when he lost good players. Yeah. I think Richie Towell left, and then McElhenney came in. So there was a transition, and nobody ever spoke about the player that left, and that's where Stephen was unbelievable at Dundalk, and it looks like Higgy's got that as well.
Before we wrap up, there has been a lot of soul searching about the sort of indifferent results, whatever, and Derry are flying the flag, but the point has been made, like, we are losing a lot of players because that's just the way it is. Now you can lose the likes of Curtis, who may go obviously in Melia or whatever, but it's that tier of players then who are going to League One. So how do we sort of make up the gap then and get the transfer fees in, or at least have the players coming through? Because Shamrock Rovers seem to be in a bit of no man's land in Europe this year, where none of their players were coming through from the academy, but they lost lines in Mandroyo and they couldn't cope, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very hard. Rovers have the best academy in the country, but it's very hard to get into Shamrock Rovers first team because they are so good, and it's brilliant bringing academy players through and having a pathway there, but they have to be good enough to get into Stephen Bradley's team, and they haven't got to a group stage and won 3 league titles in a row for no reason. It's because they've got exceptional players. Like, if you're a young attacking midfielder at Shamrock Rovers in the academy, you have to get rid of Jack Byrne and Richie Towell and Graham Burke and Liam Burt. Now he gets his first goal after his injury the other day. Like, so Rovers have a lot of exceptionally good players, but yeah, you want a pathway for kids, and I know what you're saying is get better transfer fees in. I think they have to have a blanket agreement across the league to
You would advocate that?
Well, the sell-on or get-out clauses and contracts. I think if every club in the league says no, we're not doing them, and everyone has to stick for it, like, and then you'll get better transfers for our players.
Dan?
Yeah, well, I think the only issue with that is the players then will just not sign longer term contracts and try and go and freeze, but there still is compensation that comes with that. That is, if you're going to decent clubs, that compensation is substantial enough. Now I think like some clubs individually are not doing them anymore, like Bows aren't doing them, Cork aren't doing them, but I suppose representatives will find a way to try and get around it, but Yeah,
100% they will, but we can't cry about transfer fees if clubs are putting the clauses in, and I can understand that if you want to get a player like a smaller team to compete with Rovers or one of the bigger teams and they can't do it financially, they can say, listen, we'll let them go for cheaper. But until that's out of the game, I think it's going to be the same for transfer fees, and as you're saying, losing players to Lincolns and League One clubs.
Kev Doherty's obviously been a long time ally of yours. What did you make of the situation where he was seemingly just tapped up by Cork?
Listen, I'm not surprised. I think right now he's the manager of the year. I think what he's doing at Drogheda it's remarkable. They've got Andrew Wogan, a 17-year-old in goals. I'm not too sure how many other managers in the Premier Division will play a 17-year-old. Manny Adebiega playing centre back, and he's got to move to Norwich. It's just year after year Kev's churning out results and overperforming to what he should be, but they've a very, very good squad, and I'm not surprised that Cork came calling, and I'm also not surprised that Kev turned it down, because I think things at Drogheda are probably changing, dynamic in the background, and he probably sees maybe next season will be a bit different there.
Sadly, we're running out of time, but two of the lads, the lieutenants you brought in, are absolutely thriving as managers. So you're a good judge of a football brain.
You'd love to be my assistant if I get another job, wouldn't you?
Where are you going? That's my last
everyone
question.
Wants, yeah.
Where is Big Tim? The next one is the big one. The Linfield job, if it ever came up, but that's the one for you.
Well, listen, probably play our home games in Derry, there, will we?
What are you actively pursuing future gainful, meaningful employment?
Listen, I look to see if there's anything that comes up, and if a club, I'll apply for things that I'd be interested in, and if they'd be willing enough to give me another go, I'd be delighted to get back in. So we'll just have to sit and wait and see if anything comes up.
Are you patient? Like, are you sort of getting antsy now? I'm sure you get out of it at first, and it's great to get a little bit of a break. But
yeah, well, it was the first time I was out of football for 21 years since I left school. Really, apart from an injury I had at St Johnstone before I came back to Ireland. So yeah, it is. You get first few weeks is grand, and then she starts giving more and more jobs around the house. So
Shawneen,
I'm desperate now to get myself another club.
Does Shawneen want you to get a new club now? Is she like the time
any job now at this stage? She wants me to get.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it's been good.
Because the reality of the League of Ireland shift. So you had a night shift, wasn't it? When you were Drogheda, it always reminded me of like third Simpsons and final Simpsons reference of the day when Homer had two jobs and the door in the quickie mart was just hitting his head and he couldn't wake up. He was that tired. And I was always thinking of you, like Tim Clancy, just like trying to think of tactics and the door is just hitting his head.
Yeah, listen, I'm not the only person that works two jobs or whatever. So yeah, that was just the reality of it back. It
was a night shift.
So it was a night shift, yeah. But yeah, that was 3 years ago or something. So yeah, listen, you do what you have to do.
Thanks for coming in.
Oh, what, Johnny?
Yeah, we did have a couple of comments just on facilities. It's pretty simple. The Dogs shouldn't get a licence until they fix the pitch, from Peter Aim. And Quirky 1980, the big construction firms have made it impossible to build anything in Ireland. They gobble up any government funding as profit. And the one thing I will say is, I would have a lot of sympathy for clubs. Everything is so expensive to do anything now. That is going to be a problem. We also have a comment from Mark Kendi. Sligo Rovers lost Johnny Kendi, Keena and now Mata. Every year for the last 3 years, unless there are proper money, that's just a circle. It's really difficult for Sligo Rovers, who in my view are not entirely out of the relegation struggle on the back of losing Mata.